Ryan Ham here, and what you see before you is a pair of Rugers. One is a Mark II, and one is a Mark III 2245. And what I'm going to do is make this more like this. The purpose of this video is to show you how to install this. This is a one-piece part that you can buy on the internet. Tandem Cross, there's a half a dozen other people that make it. And what it does is it removes your magazine disconnect functionality. What you see there is what they call a bushing. Essentially what it does, it makes it so that you can fire the 2245 without having a magazine in there, and you can disassemble it without having a magazine in there. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. So there's the offender there. That is essentially that little leg there engages with the back of the magazine here and pushes it out of the way. What that does is that allows the sear, which is down here, the sear to move. If that is down, the sear won't move. If that is up and out of the way, then the sear will move. So when you insert the magazine, it enables all the functions of the gun. The problem there is that when you're trying to disassemble it, it requires you to have a magazine in the gun, and if you're too much of a rule breaker and you accidentally leave a round in the magazine, there's a greater possibility for a negligent discharge. Beyond that, it makes it a pain. There's several extra steps you have to go through in order to get the gun to disassemble and work. Okay, a little hint here. Before you disassemble it, look how everything is arranged in here. And if you see down here, there's a little spring attached to the sear. Okay, I've taken it down a little bit further just to illustrate the point I'm making. That spring has got to be back in that position. That's that sear spring. Everything might seem like it'll function, but your pins will be falling out and you won't know why. So that spring there engages with this groove right there, and that keeps the pin from going back and forth. So you want that groove to engage with that spring, and then everything will be right as rain. You see how that pin or the spring is resting against the pin? That's forward on the gun. We do not want that spring to be in the way, so we have to push it down, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. We have to push it down while we're pushing the hammer pin through. In order to do that, we have to get the grip off. So let's go ahead and take both of the grips off with my cheap Chinese Torx bit driver of the proper size. I haven't included how to disassemble the gun to the point where we started, which was field stripping, because there's a ton of videos out there, and frankly it's not necessary for the purposes of this video. Okay, so we're going to push this pin through. See all kinds of garage tabletop gunsmiths pushing that pin through without doing anything, using a hammer, and they're pounding on it. Well, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is use your third hand and push that little spring that I was showing you just a minute ago out of the way. So get a better tool, something that can get down inside of there. And once you get that down inside of there, that the pin just pushes through real easy. You see, I'm going to push the pin out. There's that groove I was talking to you. That's where that spring goes in there to keep that from coming out normally. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the pin out to where we can get the hammer out, but we don't want to get it out so far that we take the safety out. I think that's far enough. Okay, really difficult to do around the camera, but if you could see the how far the pin is out there, and you can see through here that there's a very fine line when it's in just a little bit too far, but it is in just the right distance now, and I can lift my hammer out and that whole assembly comes out. So that whole glob of things just comes right out, and it kind of falls apart. So here's I'll go ahead and set that aside. Here are the parts that the other videos will normally tell you to discard. You've got the spring here, and we're going to discard that. We're not going to need that. And we've got this. This is the actual lever. And then we've got this little half bushing here. You saw how that all went together like that. What the replacement part does is it takes the place of those items in the gun, and it sets everything in exactly the same spot that it would normally be in the gun, and then it allows everything to function without your sear being disabled. Okay, so as you can see, the bushing is now installed in the hammer, and it was a pretty tight fit. I didn't really have to hit it that hard, but I used a rubber mallet to just tap it in there, and that's a good thing. You want it. You don't want any play in that at all. And we will go on to the next step, which is to insert it back in that hole and back down inside of there. And there's a proper orientation to have everything put together. You see the sear is all the way forward. The spring for the sear is behind the pin, and of course that'll jump in front of the pin and jump onto that groove when you push it all the way through. And now all we have to do is put the hammer back in. And the way to do that is to drop the tail back behind there while you're putting it into that little slot there. This engages inside of that slot. The tail has to go back, and you kind of line it up with the pin, and when the pin is in the right place, it kind of pops in. There you go, like that. See, the pin isn't quite aligned through that hole. So if you have to, you could pull the trigger and release the hammer, and it goes forward, and then you could kind of wiggle the hammer to get that pin through that hole. See? Okay, the pin's most of the way through. Once that little spring there snaps into that little groove, you'll see it happen right about there. You hear that? There you go. Now everything's together. You can put the rest of the gun together, and you're set. If you practice, make sure you pay attention to how the orientation of everything is. You're going to be good to go. And we're back, and the magazine disconnect is out. I also did a couple of other things that I've done I've shown you in other videos. Of course, I've replaced the loaded chamber indicator, and I've also shimmed the trigger and replaced the trigger pin after drilling the hole out to number 19 to tighten up the tolerances a little bit and keep the trigger from wiggling a lot, and I think I've done a pretty decent job of it. So magazine release. If you also notice, I did take some plastic away from the bottom of the grip so the magazine has a little bit of extra flex in it to help it seat. Clear gun. And with the bolt closed, I could pull the trigger, of course. Could always do that, but magazine pops straight out. Drop the bolt, and with the bolt closed, I can pull the trigger. Makes disassembly a lot easier. This is Ryan Ham. I enjoyed making the video. If you enjoyed watching it, please click like, favorite, share, and comment. If you're not already, you can subscribe to my channel and you'll see more videos just like this. Again, this is Ryan Ham. Goodbye. I think that's far enough. Almost. So if you pull on the hammer while you're doing it, you should be able to find out that exact point. Oops, that exact point at which the hammer comes free, and darn it. Okay, so if that happens, get that pin off the ground. If that happens, I've got my punch through there, so it's pretty easy just to shove it back in